Let's implement the authentication system in Dioxus full stack application. We create a simple login form to log in user and a register form to register user. We also get a root is /user. It's a protected root. If we not log in, it will show you are not authorized. We can click this go back to this register form. In register form, let's register a new user. If we input nothing in this user name field and password field, if we try to register a user, it will show us error message, username or password can't be empty. Let's register username Jim. Let's give it a password 123456. Let's click this register button. After we register successfully, it will go to this login form. Let's go back to this register form. If we try to register same username Jim again, it will show us error message, username Jim is already taken. Let's go to login form, click this link. In login form, if we try to log in, username and password are empty. When we click this login button, it will show error message, username or password can't be empty. If we log in a user not registered, PAM, when we click this login, it will show us error message, username PAM is not registered. Let's change username to Jim. If we input a wrong password like 123, we click this login, it will show us password is not correct. Let's type the right password is 123456. Let's click this login. Then we will go to this protect root user. It will show, hello Jim, your ID is 2. We can click this logout button to log out user. When we log out, it will go back to this login form. If we try to go to the protect root /user, it will show you are not authorized. In desktop, let's create a new folder. Let's give it a name Dioxus Auth. In terminal, let's type cd and drag this folder into terminal. We will change the current directory to this Dioxus Auth. In this directory, let's generate a new Dioxus full stack project. So we will run dx new. Let's give it a name Auth. Subtemplate, we will choose bare bones. Full stack, we will choose true. Router, we will choose true. Taiwan CSS, we will choose true. We will choose web by default. Then we can close this terminal. Let's open this folder. It will generate a project named Auth in this Dioxus Auth folder. Let's drag this folder into Visual Studio Code. Let's first go to this src folder, invent.rs file. Let's remove this all. We will build from scratch. First, let's add an attribute allow non-snake case. So we can name function component first letter start with uppercase. Let's create a main function -main. Let's create a root component we give it a name apple. First letter will be uppercase. Return type will be element. Let's change this import to use Dioxus prelude asterisk. Let's add an attribute component for this app component. So its app component will be the root component. Then let's create a home component. Let's give it a name home. Returning type element. Let's call rsx macro. In this macro, let's just write a content home. Let's add an attribute component for this home component. Let's create a root enum. We will make it a public, so pub enum root we need to add an attribute derive colon partial equal and rootable for this enum router. Then let's add this home component to this router enum. We will add an attribute router, give it a path slash, then home component. In app component, let's render components in router. So we will call rsx macro. In this macro, we will call router component. Let's change this to a pair of curly brackets. Then we'll use the turbofish syntax to specify the type is this router enum type. Then in main function, let's launch our application. So we will call launch function and pass this app component as argument. Let's open a new terminal in Visual Studio Code. Let's run dxserve polite form web port 4000. Let's go to the web browser. So it will show the home in web browser. Now let's shut down our server. We will build our application from backend. In cargo.toml file, let's add dependencies. We will use Tokyo one cell to initiate a database connection. We use SQLX to connect to SQLite database, XML session for session, XML session auth for session authentication, XML for backend server, bcrypt for encrypt password, a single thread to implement a sync method, anyhow for error type. Later, we will make these dependencies optional. And these dependencies, please make sure you use the same version number as mine, or it might cause errors. In SLC folder, let's create a new file. Let's give the name backend. In this file, let's create a mod.rs file. Let's add this backend as a module to our project. So in main.rs file, we will add a mod backend. In backend folder, let's create a new file db.rs. We will create a database connection in this db.rs file. Let's add this file as a module. So in mod.rs file, we'll add a public mod db. Let's go to db.rs file. Let's create a global variable static. We'll give it a name db. We will give it a type one cell. Import from Tokyo sync one cell. We put a database pool in this one cell, so it will only initiate a database connection once. In this one cell, type will be pool. Import from SQLX. In this pool will be SQLite, also import from SQLX. Equal to, we will call one cell const new function. Then let's create a sync function to get the connection to the database. So async hyphen, let's give it a name db. Returning type will be pool SQLite. In this function, let's create a variable pool equal to, we call SQLX SQLite pool connector function. Then we'll pass a connector string. It will be SQLite colon slash slash. Then the database files path, we give it a db.SQLite. So it will open this db.SQLite file in our project directory as database file. So let's create this db.SQLite file in our project directory. So let's create a new file. We give it a name db.SQLite. Then let's call await to handle the future and wrapper to handle the result. Let's return this pool. After we create a connection to the database, let's also create a table in database. So we will call pool.execute method. Then we will write a query. We will create a table if not exists. Let's give it a name users. Let's add a first field ID. Type will be integer. We give it a primary key. so its ID will be unique. Then let's also add auto increment, so this ID will automatically increase. We don't need to insert a value for this ID field. Second field, let's give it a name username. Type will be text. Last field, let's give it a name password, also text. Then let's call await to handle the future and wrapper to handle the result. Let's insert the first user whose ID is 1 as a guest user. First, we need to check if the guest user already in the database. So let's create a model to query data from database. In backend folder, let's create a new file. Let's give it a model.rs. Let's add this file as a module. So in model.rs file, let's add a pub model. Let's create a public structure. Let's give it a name user SQL. It will have same fields as this user's table: ID, username, password. So pub ID, we give it a type I64. Pub user name, we give it a type string. Pub password, we also give it a type string. Then we need to add attribute derive SQLX from row. After we add this attribute, we can use this user SQL as a type we query data from database. Let's go back to db.rs file. Let's create a variable, give it a name rows. We will give it a type annotation vehicle. In its vehicle will be user SQL equal to, we call SQLX query as function. Then let's select from users, we will add a where condition ID equal to question mark 1. We call bind method to bind a parameter will be 1. Then let's call fetchOut method. We'll pass a reference of this poll as argument. Then let's call await to handle the future and wrapper to handle the result. Let's create a if expression. If rows, we will call len method to get the length of this row equal to 0. So this means we didn't find any user ID is 1. So we will insert the first user into the database whose ID will be 1, and this user will be the guest user. So we'll call SQLX query function insert into users user name password values question mark 1 question mark 2 bind. First parameter will be username. We give it a guest. We call bind method again. Second parameter will be password. We also give it a guest. Then let's call suno method. We'll pass a ref poll as argument. Then let's call await to handle the future and wrapper to handle the result. Then let's create a function to get the database poll from this one cell. So let's create a single function -, let's give it a name getDB. Returning type will be, we will give it a left parameter static. Then it's poll hold SQLite. In this function, we will call db.get or init function. Then we will pass this db function as argument into this get or init. So db. Then we need to call await to handle the future. In backend folder, let's create a new file. Let's give it a name session.rs. In this file, we will create a new session store. First, let's add this file as a module. So in model.rs file, let's add a pub mod session. Let's go back to this session.rs file. Let's create a public async function. Let's give it a name session. Return type will be session store. In this session store will be the database pools type. It will be session SQLite pool. In this function, let's first get a database pool. So let's create a variable pool equal to, we call get a db function. In db.rs file, we forget to add the pub keyword before this get a db function. So let's add a pub keyword. Then in session.rs file, let's call get a db function. Then let's call await to handle the filter. So it will return database pool to this variable pool. Let's create a session config. Let's create a variable config equal to, we call session config new function. Then we can call with table name to specify the table name in database for store session data. Let's give the name session table. Then we need to call with key method. In this method, we will pass a key generator function to generate an encryption key for session. Then let's create a new session store and also return that session store. So we will call session store new function. Between this session store and the new function, we need to specify the database pools type. So we will add a turbofish syntax. Database pool type will be session SQLite pool. First argument, we will pass this database pool, and it will be in option, so it will be some hold this pool. Then let's call colon method to get the ownership. Then let's call into method. So we call into method, it will convert this database pool from pool SQLite to session SQLite pool type. Second argument, we'll pass this session config as argument. Then let's call await to handle the filter and wrapper to handle the result. In backend folder, let's create a new file. Let's give the name authsession.s. Let's add this file as module. So in mode.rs file, let's add a pub mode auth session. In this file, let's create a public function. Let's give the name auth session config. Return type will be auth config. In this auth config will be the IDs type. So we will give it a ID type i64 integer type. In this function, we will create a new auth session config and also return that auth session config. So we will call auth config default function. Between auth config and default, we will use turbofish syntax to specify the IDs type will be i64. Then we will call with anonymous user ID. We will pass ID1 as anonymous user ID. So ID will be in sum. That's why we in this db.rs file, we create a first user whose ID is 1 as a guest user. Let's create a struct type. Let's give the name user. We use this user type for the authentication user type in auth session. So it needs to have 3 fields. First is pub ID. Type will be i64. Second field will be pub anonymous. Type will be boolean type. Last field is username. Type will be string. Then we need to add attribute derive colon. To make this user type as authentication user type for auth session, we need to implement authentication trait import from Axim session auth authentication. Then for user, then we need to add a type annotation for this authentication. First is this user type. Second is ID type. Third type is database type, SQLite pool import from SQLX. Then we need to implement load user is authenticated is active is anonymous method. So let's implement this method. Load user is active is anonymous is authenticated. Let's add an attribute for this authentication. So we will add an attribute async trait, and let's import this async trait. So at the top we will use async trait. So after we add this attribute, we can make this load user method as the sync method. So let's add a sync keyword before this method, so we can remove this lifetime parameter. Let's also remove this. And this returning type, we will change it to result user. Second type will be arrow type from anyhow arrow. In this load user method, let's add a if expression. If this user ID equal to 1, so it means this user is a guest user. So we will return an OK. Hold user ID will be this user ID. Anonymous will be true. Username will give it a username string from guest. Else, so this user ID is not equal to 1. Let's fetch that user from database. Let's create a variable, give it a name user. Let's add a type annotation. Will be user SQL equal to, we call SQLX query as function. Then let's write a select asterisk from users. Let's add a var condition ID equal to $1. Then let's call bind method to bind the parameter will be reference this user ID. Then let's call fetch1 method. Then we'll pass this database pool as argument. It's database pool in option. So we will call pool.unwrap to unwrap that pool from this option. Then let's call await to handle the future and unwrap to handle the result. Then let's return a user in OK. So OK user ID will be user ID. Anonymous will be false. Username will be the username from this user we get from database. So user.username. Then in its active method, we will return opposite value to anonymous. So exclamation marker self.anonymous. In this is anonymous method, we will return value self.anonymous. Is authenticated, will return opposite value to self.anonymous. Let's create a type alias. We use this type to extract auth session from auth session layer. So type, let's give it a name auth session extractor equal to, its type will be auth session. First, in this auth session will be this user type. We defined this user struct type. Second type is ID type IC4. Third type is session SQLite pool database type. Last type is SQLite pool database type. Let's create a public function to extract auth session from router. First, at the top, let's import use Dioxus prelude asterisk. Let's define a public async function. Let's give it a name get auth session. Return type, give it a result. First type in this result will be this auth session extractor. Second type in this result, we give it a arrow type server function arrow. In this function, we will call extractor function. Then let's add a type annotation. First type will be auth session extractor. Second type we give it an underscore. Then let's call await to handle the filter. Then let's call map arrow to propagate an arrow if there is an arrow. So we will return arrow server function arrow new. Let's pass a message. Auth session not found. Don't worry about this arrow, about this extractor. Later it will be fixed. In backend folder, let's create a new file. Let's give the name router.is. Let's add this file as module. So in mode.is file, let's add a pub mode router. In this file, we will create a XML router. First, let's import Dioxus prelude asterisk. Let's create a public function. Let's give the name router. Let's add a parameter session store. Type will be session store. In session store will be session SQLite pool. Second parameter, let's add a auth config. Type will be auth config. In auth config will be I64 type. Third parameter, let's add a pool. Type will be pool SQLite. Last parameter, let's give it a name app. Will be a closure type iPhone. Returning type will be element. Returning type will be router. Import from XML. First, let's create a variable, give it a name config equal to. We will call serve config new function to create a new serve config. Then we need to call unwrap. Then let's call router from XML new function to create a new router. Then let's call serve Dioxus application method on this router. We'll pass this config as the first argument, this app as the second argument. Then let's call layer method on this router. We will add an auth session layer, so auth session layer new function. Between this auth session layer and the new function, we will add a type annotation. First is user type. Second type is ID type I64. Third type is session SQLite pool. Last type is SQLite pool. In this new function, we will pass this pool as argument. It will be in sum, so sum pool. Then after this new function, we will call with config method and pass auth config as argument. Let's add another layer. This layer will be session layer. We'll call new function to add a new session layer. We will pass this session store as argument. Don't worry about these two arrows. This serve config and serve Dioxus application. Later they will be fixed. When we call this serve Dioxus application method on this router, it will render Dioxus application on server side and register server functions. In backend folder, let's create a new file. Let's give it a name xml server.is. Let's add this file as module. So in mode.is file, let's add a pub mode xml server. In this file, we will create a function to launch XML server. Let's create a public async function. Let's give it a name launch server. We will add a parameter. Let's give it a name app. Type will be function type iPhone. Returning type will be element. Import from Dioxus prelude. Let's change it to asterisk. In this function, let's first create a variable poll equal to, we call get db function to get the database pool. So let's call wait to handle the future. Then let's create a variable, give it a name session store. We will call session function import from session file. Then let's call await to handle the future. It will return a session store to this variable. Then let's create a variable, give the name auth session config equal to, we will call auth session config function. Import from auth session file. Then let's create a variable, give the name router equal to, we will call router function. Import from router file. We will pass this session store as the first argument. This auth session config as the second argument. This pool we need a colon it to get the ownership. Because this pool is ref pool, this parameter app as the last argument. Then let's add a semicolon. Let's create a variable, give the name address addr equal to, we will call Dioxus CLI config. Full stack address or localhost to get the address. Then let's create a variable, give the name listener equal to, we will call Tokyo night TCP listener band function. Then we will pass this address as argument. So this listener will listen on this address. Then let's call await to handle the filter and wrapper to handle the result. Then let's call Ximo serve function to serve this listener. Second argument will be this router. Then let's call await to handle the filter and unwrapper to handle the result. Let's create a new file in backend folder. Let's give the name server functions.rs. Let's add this file as a module. So in mode.rs file, let's add a pub mode server functions. In this file, let's first import use Dioxus prelude asterisk. Let's create a first server function. It will be a public async function. Let's give it a name register. We use this server function to register user. Let's add two parameters to this function. First is the username. Type give it a string. Second parameter password. Type also string. Returning type will be result. First type in this result, let's give it a unit type. Just a pair of parentheses. Second type is arrow type, will be server function arrow. Then let's add attribute server. So we will mark this function as a server function. First, let's check if username the trim, we call trim method on username to trim white space around this username. We don't want our username to be empty or only contains white space, equal to an empty string. Or password, then we call is empty method. We allow password contains white space, but we don't want a password is empty. If this or this is true, let's format a message that variable msg equal to, we call format macro username or password can't be empty. Then let's return a server function in arrow. So ir server function new will pass this msg into this new function as argument. Else, then let's call getDB function to get a database pool. So let's create a variable. Let's give it a name pool equal to, let's call getDB function. Then let's call awaiter to handle the future. We want a username to be unique, so we need to check if this username already in the database. So let's create a variable, give it a name rows. We will give it a type annotation like called user SQL equal to, let's call SQLX query as function. Then let's select from users table. Then we need to add a where condition, user name equal to $1. Then let's call bind method. We will bind the username as a parameter's value. Then let's call fetch all method. We'll pass this pool as argument. Then let's call await to handle the future, and unwrap to handle the result. Then let's create a if expression. If rows, we will call len method to get the length of this row not equal to 0. So it means we find a user in database whose username is this username. So let's format a message. Let msg equal to format user name is already taken. Then we'll pass this username. Let's return a server function arrow in ir. So ir server function new msg. Else, we didn't find a user by this username in database. So let's hash the password. Let hash password equal to, we call bcrypt hash function will pass the password as the first argument. Second argument will pass a integer value as cost. Let's give it a 10. Then let's call unwrap to handle the result. Let's insert a username with this hashed password into the database. So SQLX query function. Then let's write a insert into users username password values $1 and $2. Then let's call bind method to bind the parameter username, and let's call bind method again to bind this hash password. Then let's call execute method. We'll pass this pool as argument. Then let's call await to handle future, unwrap to handle the result. After we successfully insert a user into the database, let's return an OK. In this OK, we just return nothing, a pair of parentheses. Here, this placeholder should be $1. Let's create another server function to log in user. So let's create a public async function. Let's give the name login. We need to add parameters username string and the password string. Returning type will be result. First type in this result, we give it a unit type, a pair of parentheses. Second type is arrow type, is server function arrow. Then let's add an attribute server for this function, so it will make this function as a server function. First, let's check. We don't want the username or password to be empty. So if username .trim equal to empty string or password that is empty, then we will format a string like a message format username or password can't be empty. Then let's return error, hold a server function arrow, new with this MSG. We don't want the user log in as guest user, so let's add else if username equal to guest, then let's format a string. We change this message to guest is not allowed to log in, and we return this server function arrow with this message in error. Else, let's call getDB function to get a database pool. So let's create a variable pool equal to getDB.await. Then let's select a user from database by this username. Let's create a variable, give the name rows. Let's give it a type annotation like user SQL equal to, we will call SQLX query adds function. Then select asterisk from users where username equal to $1. Then let's call bind method to bind the parameter is username. Then let's call fetchAll method. We pass this pool as argument. Then let's call await to handle the future and wrap to handle the result. Then let's create our if expression. If is rows .len method to get the length equal to 0. This means there is no user of this username in the database. So let's format our string. Let's change this message to user name is not registered user name. Then we will return a server function with this message in error. Else, it means we find the user by this username in the database. So let's verify the user input password with the hashed password in the database. Let's create a variable, give the name is valid equal to, we will call bcrypt verify method. We will pass the input password as first argument. Second argument will be hashed password from database. So it will be ref rows. The user in this rows is the first element, so its index number is 0. Then we will call password field to get the password. Then let's call unwrap to handle the result. If input password is correct, it will return true to this variable. If input password is not correct, it will return false. So let's create a if else. If is valid, it's true. Then let's call getAuthSession function to get AuthSession. Let's create a variable, give the name AuthSession equal to, we call getAuthSession function. Then let's call await to handle the future. Then let's add a question mark to propagate an arrow. Then we will call AuthSession.login user to log in this user to AuthSession. We'll pass the ID as argument. ID will be rows 0.id. After we successfully log in user, let's just return OK, hold nothing. Empty pair parentheses in is OK. Else, this is valid is false, so it means input password is not correct. So let's add an else blocker. Let's format a message. Let's change this message to password is not correct. Let's remove this username. Then we will return an error. Hold this server function arrow with this message. Let's create a server function to log out a user from our session. So let's define a public async function. Let's give it a name logout. We will add no parameters to this function. Let's give it a return type result. First type in this result is unit type. Second type is server function arrow. Let's add an attribute server for this function. First, let's get our auth session. So let's create a variable. Give the name auth session equal to, we call get auth session function. Then let's call await to handle the future. Then let's use question marker to propagate a arrow. Then let's call auth session log out user to log out a current user in its auth session. After we successfully log out a user, let's return an OK. Hold a pair of parentheses. Let's create a server function to get a user from our session. Let's create a public async function. Let's give it a name get a user. Return type will be result. First type in this result, let's give it a string type. Second type will be server function arrow type. Let's add an attribute server for this function. First, let's get our auth session. We will call get auth session function await. Then use question marker to propagate a arrow. Let's create a if else blocker. We can call is authenticated method on this auth session. So auth session is authenticated. If user log in its auth session, this is authenticated method will return true. So in this if blocker, let's get a current user. We will call auth session current user to get a current user. It will return option hold user. So let's call unwrap to handle the option. Then let's format a message equal to format hello, your ID is first will be user username. Second will be user ID. Then let's return this message in OK. So OK message else. This is the authenticated method will return false. It means we didn't log in user in its auth session. Let's format our message. You are not authorized. Then let's return an error. Hold a server function arrow. New. We will pass this MSG in this new function. We just finished our backend. Let's go to current.toml file. We will add optional to its dependencies. So TOQ, let's add optional equal to true. Let's copy this. Also SQLX optional true. XML session auth XML bcrypt async treat anyhow. Then in its filters, let's remove this web in default. Let's add a server equal to Dioxus server. Then let's add this dependencies to this server. So first is diaper TOQ. Second is SQLX. Then XML session XML session auth XML bcrypt async treat how. After we make these dependencies optional, we need to go to these files. These dependencies will only used on server side, so we need to add attribute cfg future equal to server. It will get rid of this arrow. Also here. Also here. Also this function. Also this function. Also this type, this function. And this XML server file. Let's add this attribute. Also here. Let's go to this db file. Let's add attribute. Here. And also here. Also here. And let's go to this model file. Let's add an attribute. Let's go back to this db file. Here, this importer, we need to add this attribute. In this auth session, we also need to add this attribute for this model. Here, let's go to this router. Let's add an attribute. Let's go server function here. Let's go to this session. Then we just get rid of these arrows. Let's go to main.rs file, in main function. Let's launch our application on web. So we will call launch builder web the launch method. Then we'll pass this app component as argument. Then we need to add attribute cfg future equal to web on this line of code. Here, let's add a semicolon. Then let's also launch our backend server in main function. Let's first import backend XML server launch server function. Because this launch server function is a sync function, so we need to call tokyo runtime new function. Then let's call unwrap. Then we can call block on function. It will be a executor, can execute a sync future. So we'll pass a sync block in this function. In this function, we will call this launch server function, import from backend XML server. Then we'll pass this app as argument. Then let's call await. Here, let's also add a semicolon. Then we need to add attribute cfg future server. Then let's also add this attribute on this importer. Let's start our server. In terminal, let's run dx serve polite form web port 4000. Let's press enter. So our server works fine, there is no error. And in db.sqlite file, it will create a user table, have 3 fields, ID, and username, password, and it will insert the first user is guest, and ID is 1. Then let's work on front end. In SLC folder, let's create a new folder. Let's give it a name components. In its components folder, let's create a new file mod.rs. Let's add this folder as a module to our project. So in main.rs file, let's add mod components. In its components folder, let's create a new file register.rs. Let's first add this file as a module to this mod.rs file in this components folder. So pub mod register. Then let's create another file. Let's give it a name login.rs. Let's also add this file as a module to this mod.rs file. So pub mod login. Let's create a last file user.rs. Also, let's add this file as a module. So pub mod user. Let's first work on this register component. Let's first import Dioxus prelude asterisk. Then let's create a public function component. Let's give it a name register. Returning type will be element. Then we need to add an attribute component for this function. Let's create a mutable state username. We will call use signal hook. Let's give it an initial value string new, empty string. We use this state to store username value from input field. Let's create another mutable state password equal to use signal. Also give it an empty string as the initial value. We use this data to store password from input field. Let's create another mutable state. Let's give it a name error message equal to use signal. Also give it an initial value, an empty string. We use this data to store error message returned from backend server function. Then let's create a navigator. We will call use navigator to create a navigator. We will use navigator to navigate to other routes. Let's return RSX macro in its component. In this RSX macro, let's create a div element. Let's add a class. So let's link this main.css file and Taiwan CSS file in this SS folder to our project. So in main.rs file, in app component, we will call document style sheet. Let's change this to a pair of curly brackets. Then we will add a href. We will call iSet micro. Then we will pass a path is isize / main.css. Let's also add a isize Taiwan.css file. To use Taiwan CSS on Dioxus project, you need to install Node.js on your computer. So you go to this website and download Node.js and install Node.js on your computer. After you installing Node.js in terminal, let's install Taiwan CSS by npm. So we will run npm I Taiwan CSS. After you install Taiwan CSS, then we can run npx Taiwan CSS -i .input.css -o /ss Taiwan.css --watch. Let's press enter. Then we can use Taiwan CSS on our project. In home component, let's add a div component. Let's give it a class text color sky 500. Then let's add a content home. Let's go to the web browser. You can see it will show this content home color is sky blue. So this means Taiwan CSS works on our project. Let's go to this main.css file. Let's remove all the class in this file. Let's add a class screen. Let's give it a height 100 VH. Here, screen. Let's go to register file. Let's add a class screen. Let's give it a flex and justify center and items center. So this class will make the item center in the screen. Let's give it a bj color slate 50. In this div element, let's add another div element. Let's add a class attribute. Let's add a class border solid border 2 border color slate 100. Then let's give it a border rounded large, padding x 3, padding y 5, width give it a 1/4. In this div element, let's add another div element. Let's give it a class text center text size 3XL. Let's add a content register as a title. After this title, let's add a if this arrow message is not an empty string, so exclamation marker arrow message to string is empty. Then we will render arrow message. Let's create a div element. Let's add a class background color bj rose 100, text color give it a rose 600, padding y give it a 1, padding x give it a 2, rounded give it a large. Let's also add a margin y 3. Then in this div element, let's render this arrow message. Arrow message. After this if block, let's create a div element. Let's give it a class margin y 5. In this div element, let's add another div element. Let's add a class, give it a text size large. Then let's add a content username colon. After this div element, in this div element, let's add an input element. Let's give it a class. We give it a width 4, border rounded large, padding x2, padding y 1. Then let's add a type attribute. Text value attribute. We give it a username state as the initial value, so its initial value will be an empty string. Then let's add on input event. Let's add a move keyword a closure. In this closure, we can capture event e. Then we will call user name.site e.value. to get the input value from this event E, then set that value to this username state. Let's create another field to get a input password. So let's copy this div element. In this div element, we will change this username to password. Here, in this input element, we will change type to password. Here, initial value will change to password. Here, on input event, we will change to password side event value E. After this div element, let's create a button. Let's add a class. We will give it a background color BJ sky 500. Let's give it a text color text slate 50. Let's give it a padding X 3, padding Y 2. Let's give it a border rounded large, width 4, and margin Y 5. Then let's add a hover to change its background color to BJ sky 600. Then let's add an onClick event. We will add a move keyword. Then we will add a sync keyword to this cursor body. In this cursor body, we will call register function import from backend server functions. Then we will pass username state as the first argument. We add a pair of parentheses. It will return inner value string from its username state. And the second argument will pass password from password state. Then we need to call await to handle the future. Then it will return a result. Let's call match expression to handle the result. So first arm, we'll give it a OK. This OK will hold nothing, so we give it an underscore. So if it return OK, it means we register user successfully. So let's call navigator.push method. Then we will navigate to login route. So route login. Later we will define this login component. This push method will return an option. So let's use match to handle the option. First sum, we just return nothing. Second nah, we also return nothing. And the second is error, hold the error message E. So if this register function return an error, we will set this error message E to this error message state. So let's call error message.set method. Then E we will call toString to convert to string. This error message will start with server function error, then colon, then its error message content. So let's use split method to split that error message by this colon. Then let's call collect method to convert it to a vector, hold a string slice value. We only need the second element in this vector. So let's give it index number 1. Then let's call toString method to convert that from string slice to string. Let's add a content to this button. So here, let's add a content register. After this button, let's add another div element. Let's add a content already have an account. Then let's add a link to root login component. So later we will add this login component. Let's give it a class text color sky 400. Let's add a content log in now. We just finished register component. Let's go to work on login component. Let's copy the code from this register components. Then let's go to this login file. Let's pass it here. Let's change this component name to login. And we also need a state a username to get a username, password to get a password, and error message to show the error message, navigator to navigate to other routes. Here, in this title, let's change this register to login. And here, we will show the error message if there is an error message. Then, this input field will get a username. This input field will get a password. And this button, here, this button, we need to change this backend function to login function. Import from backend server functions login, so we don't need this register function. Here, after we log in, we will navigate to user component. Let's change this button content to login. Here, this link will change to don't have an account. We will link to register component. Here we will change it to register now. We finished the login component. Let's go to work on user.rs file. User.rs file. So first, let's import Dioxus prelude asterisk. Then let's create a public function. Let's give it a name user. Return type will be element. Let's add attribute component for this function. Then let's create our navigator equal to use navigator. Let's create a mutable state. Let's give it a name, it's login. Then let's call use signal hook. Let's return initial value false. Let's create a mutable state message equal to use signal. Let's give it an initial value, an empty string. Then let's create a variable. Let's give it an underscore. We will not use this variable. Then let's call use resource. So we can fetch data from database in this use resource. Let's pass a sync closure, move, a sync move. Here let's add a semicolon. Yes, a sync closure body. Let's call get user function. We import from backend server functions. Then let's call await to handle the future. It will return a result. Let's use match expression to handle the result. First time is okay. It is okay. It will hold a message. So if this function return okay, it means users log in. So in its OK arm, let's change this its login state to true. Then we set a message state to the message we get from this OK arm. Second arm is error. hold arrow E. This means user is not logged in, so we will set is logged in to false. Then let's set the message to e.toString. We will split by colon. Then we will call collect method to change it to a vector, hold string size. Then let's get the second element, index number is 1. Then let's call toString to convert it to string. Then let's return RSX macro in its component. Let's create a div element. Let's add a class. Let's give it a flex, justify center, items center. Let's give it a height screen. Then let's add another div element. Let's give it a class, text size 5XL. Then we will render message state in its div element. After this div element, let's create a if expression. If is logged in is true, then we will return a button. Let's add a class padding x1, padding y2, rounded large, background color, give it a bj state 100. Then let's add a hover, change it to background color bj state 200. Then let's add a onClick event, move. We will make this closure to be a sync closure, so we add a sync. In this async closure, we will call log out function import from backend server functions logout. Then let's call await to handle the future. We call this function to log out a user. Then let's use if light expression to handle the inner value in OK. So OK. So if we successfully log out a user, it will return an OK. In this OK, we hold nothing, so let's give it an underscore. Then in this if light block, we will set its log state to false. Then let's call navigator the push, go to the login route, so login component. Then let's add a match expression to handle the option returned from this push method. So sum will return nothing. None also return nothing. Later, we will add this login component to the root. Else, this else means user not logged in, so we will create a button. Here, we don't need this button to be async. Here, we don't need to call logout function from backend. Let's remove this. In this button, let's just call navigator to navigate to the login component. Then let's add a content to this button. Let's add a content login now. Here, let's also add a content to this button. Here, let's add a content log out We finished the user component, so let's add these 3 components to the root. Let's go to main.rs file. Here in this root enum, let's add a root, give it a path, register. Then let's add a register component. Let's import this register component. So here, use components, register. Let's also import a login component, and a user component. Here, let's add a root pass login component. Let's add a root / user component. Now there are no errors. Let's go to the web browser. Let's visit this address /register. So we got a register form, and here we can click this link to go to the login. So we got a login form, and we can click this, go back to register. Let's go to the /user root. When we are not logged in, it will show us you are not authorized. Click this button, login now. It will go to this login form. Let's go to register form, click this. Let's try to register a user. So first, let's input nothing and click this register button. It will show us error message, username or password cannot be empty. Let's register a user, give it a username Jim. Let's give it a password 123456. Let's click this register button. After we successfully register user, it will go to this login form. In database file, it will register a new user. So ID is 2, name is Jim. This is hashed password. Let's go back to register. Let's try to register same user Jim again. Here we got a wrong error message. In register.rs file, let's remove this error message set E2 string. Let's say the home error message. So let's register Jim again. This is a whole error message. We split this error message by colon, but we got 2 colon. So let's remove this colon in error message. So let's go to the server functions. Here in register server function, here in this error message, let's remove this colon. Also, let's go to this login server function. In this error message, username, let's also remove this colon. Then let's go back to register.rs file. Let's add this back to this error message set e.to string, split colon, collect to string. Let's go to the web browser. Let's refresh. Let's register Jim again. Here, Jim 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This time it will show the red error message. Username Jim is already taken. Let's input empty username, empty password. It will show username or password can't be empty. So let's go to login. Let's input nothing in username and password. Click login. It will show username or password can't be empty. Let's log in a user not registered, like a PIM. Let's click login. It will show username PIM is not registered. Let's log in Jim. Let's input incorrect password 123. It will show error message password is not corrected. Then let's input correct password 1 2 3 4 5 6. Let's click its login. So it will go to the user router and it will show, hello Jim, your ID is 2. And let's click its logout to log out user. It will go back to this login form. After we log out a user, let's try to visit a user root again. So /user. It will show you are not authorized. Login now. This is how we implement authentication in Dioxus full stack application. Thanks for watching. If you like my video, please give me a thumb up and subscribe to my channel. Hope see you next time.